Good morning and welcome to this review for The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. Trying to reduce the reflection here. It's a very reflective dust jacket. Okay, I think that's working. Yeah, that looks like you can actually see it without too much of a glare. Now, anyone who knows my reading taste or watches my channel probably realizes that biographies and autobiographies don't feature too heavily on my reading repertoire. When I do autobiographies, they tend to be of artists. I've got several autobiographies of musicians, for example, and of actual artists. Most of those artists are little known ones, and they're often Australian. It's not that I don't like biographies, they just don't really impact on me that as much as they do for some people. It's really rare for me to read one by a politician who's an Australian, and I do consider Michelle Obama essentially a politician, and I don't read that many in general from America. Yeah, so this book was given to me and I accepted it. When the person who read it, I asked them if they liked it, they said yes. Then they paused for a beat and their next statement was, "I'm so glad I'm not American." I don't disagree, so I agree. Not quite sure why this book particularly invoked that, except during COVID. It sounds like, well, Australian COVID wasn't great. It sounds like COVID in America was outright appalling. Aside from that, the reason I accepted it is because I'm doing a Goodreads annual challenge in which one of the categories is autobiography. And when I received this, I thought that it might work. I also took it with me overseas. I thought probably the best way, no offense to anyone who loves this book, the best way that I can actually guarantee that I can go through it is if I'm stuck on a plane for 6 or 7 hours and I have no other books to read. I had a feeling that it'd be one I'd pick up, I'd read a bit, and then I'd drift away. You can't really drift away when you're over the middle of the Indian Ocean, so I thought, yeah. I did like this book. I haven't rated or reviewed it yet on Goodreads. I think when I do, it's probably going to end up as a 3-star. I liked it. It wasn't life-changing for me. I think it probably will be and probably is for some people, but not me. I also didn't realise that Michelle Obama had already written other books. Apparently her first one was a best-selling memoir, Becoming, and that was more based around her and her husband campaigning and becoming president and White House and all that sort of thing. And possibly I would have liked Becoming better, because I expected The Light We Carry to be more about the political trail and the process of becoming elected as President of the United States of America. This is less so. There are anecdotes from there and there's a lot of personal stories and coping mechanisms, but it isn't essentially a political novel. It's more about Michelle Obama's attitudes towards facing life challenges and the tools we can use to do that and ways to navigate difficult situations. I think if anyone knows difficult situations, it's probably her. So one thing that was really interesting in this book, I never realized that the First Lady or the spouse of the President of the United States of America earned no wage. They are essentially unpaid labor. I didn't know that. Did you know that? If you're American, maybe you did. I don't know that anyone else did. And I'm actually quite appalled by that, because you never see anything about American politics or higher level politics without there being a spouse involved. I think I even read a book way back about politics in America that stated that above a certain level of politician, your chances of running for elections, if you didn't have a spouse and a stable home life, were minimal. Therefore, by the time you reach the First Lady of the White House, you'd think there'd be a salary involved. It looks like Michelle Obama had to quit her job. She was a lawyer or human rights worker, a bit of both, and basically dedicate her whole life to being the wife of the President of the United States, and she doesn't get paid for that? My goodness, she wasn't even really sure that she wanted to do that in the first place. Anyway, moving sideways and backwards, if we look again at this cover, it's a dust jacket. That's why it's shiny. It's a nice book. I actually expected not to be terribly impressed with it. I expected to leave it in an airport somewhere else for someone else who needed it. But I brought it home. I'm not sure. I might keep it and try and find someone else to pass it on to. Now, the cover really interested me because covers of books always interest me. It's like in the mass markets SFF, the covers are beautiful art. In this one, we've got a cover that was really, really strongly thought out, I expect. So there's some interesting things about it. You've got the author name and the title in the same script with slightly different names, slightly different colours. So the gold gilding of The Light We Carry kind of eclipses the author's name, Michelle Obama, above it. That's in a slightly faded aubergine or lavender or something. And you've got this very, what I would call vanilla photograph of a pretty mature woman smiling confidently at the camera, wearing a jumper that looks like it came from any department store you ever saw. And when I read the back, because I was still in the air and there wasn't a lot to read, I read that the jacket design, hang on, can we do this? The jacket design is by Christopher Brand. The jacket photograph is by Miller Mobley. There's a stylist called Meredith Coop. There's a tailor. Christy Rilling, you need a tailor to buy a sweater from Target? Odd. The hair was by Yin Damchu. It's certainly much better organised hair than I can normally manage. And makeup by Carl Ray. I love the fact that there's credits here for everyone involved in that cover. That's all too rare, especially in vintage books. You often never know who did the cover. How about you? What do you think? Do you think that that huge team produced a wonderful cover? I think it suits its purpose, and it is so vanilla that the book inside kind of fits it. But there's one thing that really I found very odd. When I first started reading it, I thought that it was sun damaged. I thought that all of this area up had been in the sun and faded. And that's why the author name was sort of faded. That's why you've got this blurry bit on top. Having looked at this cover for quite a while, often well dazed and bleary in the air, and maybe after a gin and tonic or two, I've come to the conclusion that that's done intentionally by the cover designer, Christopher Brand. And I think possibly he thought that this blurry, faded, sun-damaged effect was meant to reflect The Light We Carry, the title. Tell me what you think, if you've ever seen this book, if you've ever thought about it. I would not have spent so much time on it if I hadn't been in an aeroplane. But I'm dubious about the merits of intentionally fading part of the cover. Anyhow, inside, it's a book in two parts. It's interspersed with various pretty little black and white photos from Michelle Obama's early life or her later life with her daughters and her husband. There are anecdotes from when she was in the White House, and there are a lot of stories about people that she's known or contacted. So the part 1 and part 2 seem to be fairly interconnected, but Michelle herself seemed to feel that the part 2 was all about the specific things that keep her sane, and they're kind of cute. One of them is about My Kitchen Table, which is basically the people you know, and everyone knows that your friend circle and your close friends are the ones that will keep you sane at times, and Michelle definitely leans heavily on that. Partnering well, some details about relationship-y stuff. She's very hands-off when it comes to Barack Obama. She tells mutual stories, but not a lot about him. So if that's a focus that you're interested in, this might not be the book for you. There's chapter 7 is Meet My Mom, and it talks about how her mother moved to the White House with them to help keep them sane. And then there's various other things. In part 1, it's all about small powers, being seen, and the importance. I feel that it was about the importance of self-love and respect and all that sort of thing. But yes, essentially, this is all about Michelle's life and the things that she uses to deal with it. And there's a few stories, and there's a lot of insightful reflections on things. I think this book will be very good for people who've never been or have not yet been through that self-realization, self-acknowledgement stage of life. I did that back in my 20s. So when the New Age was growing strong, I didn't really disagree with anything she said. I just didn't think any of it was particularly insightful or new in my life. There will be people for whom it is. There's also, it's very nicely written. It's very beautifully edited. It shows all the signs of being able to afford a perfect team of editors, of proofreaders, correctors. It shows all the signs of a very well designed and very well produced book. I loved some of her stories about the teams that kept them working. Oh, chicken. The teams that kept them working in the White House and how they did that. The stories of the difficulty of connecting with friends for her and her daughters both while she was in that position. The whole 8 years and the, how shall we call it, the effects on her and her family. They were interesting. If I've got one major criticism about it, that is a criticism inherent to the book, it will be that she tried so hard to not say anything revolutionary, offensive, or out there, that often you will read several paragraphs and end up coming up for air going, did I even read anything that had a point or mattered or was relevant? It's so generic, it's so vanilla, it could be anything. It'll probably work for many people. I didn't hate it. I just ended up with very little of a carry-home message. And what else? It's the sort of book that would never be published unless the person was or had done something famous. Because while she is an interesting woman, I don't doubt for a second that she's a hugely intelligent one. I am formidably impressed by the things that she's achieved in her life and her drive, her motivation and energy. Her emotional intelligence seems off the scale. So all of that's very interesting, but really this book is only interesting because you know who the person was and what they did. It's one of many people in the world who did things and thought things. So yes, The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. If I ever have to do this sort of book again, and it's certainly not high on my to-read list, I would probably go back and read her first memoir, which was Becoming, because that might be a little bit more interesting to me than being given tools to live my life, which I've been living for at least as long as Michelle Obama has, and I've probably got my own tools. Hers won't work for me. I am not a wealthy American, so many of hers. I love the idea of hosting all my friends in Martha's Vineyard once a year for rest and recreation time. But it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Anyway, thanks for watching this review. It was a bit rambly. There wasn't much there. Thanks for watching this review. Read good books. Maybe even this one, because essentially it was not a bad book.